So to begin, I'd like to invite up Ian Rogers to talk a little bit about Team Cloud.
Thanks, Katie. Thank you, everyone. I hope you like our offices. We only moved in about 3 or 4 months ago, and we basically moved in because it has a big fridge and it has a big reception area for entertaining. And thank you. I mean, Wellington's turned on a fantastic day. Now, we've got some people from overseas, and Christian and Chris, and every time we talk to them on video, we always moan about the weather in Wellington. And they've come, and they can't believe that there's a problem with the weather, because today has been fantastic. So I thought, Sean, Christian, and Chris are going to do all the really interesting stuff, and I'm just going to go through a couple of slides so you know who we are and where we come from, and then I'll shut up. So only a few minutes. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we've been mainly working in Wellington for the last 10 years. So Team IM, we've got a product called ContentWorks. Quite a few agencies in Wellington use it. And we've just opened an office in Auckland. We've been an Oracle partner, but we also have workloads, and we've implemented ContentWorks and other systems on-premise and in AWS, Azure, and Oracle Cloud overseas. So we're sort of like a multi-cloud team. We are an AWS partner, we're an Azure partner, and we're an Oracle partner. So we do have experience of all the clouds. We are a tier 1 managed service provider with DIA. You know, some of our larger customers, like Inland Revenue and ACC, I think that's a very significant requirement. And our managed services team is based here in Wellington, and our new team, which will be supporting the cloud, it's 24/7, and that will be based here as well. So all the support for what we're talking about today will be here initially, and we'll also be then providing support within Auckland and Christchurch, where we hope to open an office next year. Next slide. Who am I looking at? So as I said, we run workloads overseas, but increasingly our customers were asking us about whether we would be able to move those workloads back to New Zealand. And this is a report from IDC a couple of years ago, and just talking about what's important for New Zealand customers versus Australian customers. And I think sovereignty is probably top of the list, and I think given recent events, I think data sovereignty and cyber resilience is becoming even more important than it used to be. And that's just not reference to last weekend, that's just reference to the geopolitical problems, cyber terrorism, lots of things like that. And latency is also another issue for some companies and organizations in New Zealand using an overseas cloud. So we definitely knew there was a demand for it. And we started talking to Oracle and the other hyperscalers about their plans. Next slide. So Oracle announced a program called Alloy in October 2022. And Alloy basically allows an Oracle partner in a region to run Oracle's cloud. After quite a few discussions and meeting a lot of people within Oracle, we eventually signed up as an Alloy partner last November. And the amazing thing is we signed the piece of paper in November, and we are now live. And we actually went live on Sunday. So we're live for internal. We're setting up demo systems. We're repatriating a lot of workloads from Australia back to New Zealand, but that we use internally. And then from the 1st of August, we'll be available for moving workloads and customers. And our first customer starts deploying to our cloud on the 1st of August, which is next Thursday. And we get all the same services as you get with OCI in Sydney, apart from at the moment we don't offer SaaS, but we are in discussions about being able to provide some kind of SaaS within the next probably 2 years. So Team Cloud is a brand of Team IM. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we talk about, there's 5 things, 5 S's. So sovereignty is quite a big one. Our data centers are 100% sustainable, carbon neutral data centers. We've got the same security as you get within any other Oracle region. We have the same infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, services available. And we have within, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Autonomous Database, but within the Autonomous Database in Oracle Cloud, which we will have, and it's available from the 1st of August, then we will have all the AI tools that are available within that. The cloud and our is in a region in, so we're going live with Auckland West. We're live with Auckland West, we're going live with Auckland North later this year. And all the racks are GPU ready. So if you have GPU requirements in the future, yeah, please talk to us. And then support, which I've mentioned, managed services, 24/7, all in New Zealand. And we are very passionate about employing New Zealanders in New Zealand to deliver the services and the support. Next slide. So data sovereignty. So it's just a slide explaining, but you've got data residency, which is basically the blocks in blue. But data sovereignty is only really gets there if you are not owned by a US parent. So because Team IM is a New Zealand company, Team Cloud, and we're running the cloud and we own and manage it, then we don't fall under the jurisdiction of the US Fed around the Patriot Act and the Cloud Act. So we come under New Zealand government jurisdiction. So that's the two bits in orange. So that's quite important. It gives a lot of people that security that the US agencies can't come in and demand to see your data. But just on that point, when people sign up, we allocate them a tenancy, and then we give them keys to that tenancy, and then Oracle can't see the data, and we can't see your data. It's completely unique to you with those keys. Next slide. So there are our two regions. We are in our own realm. That's an Oracle Cloud thing. So the Oracle Cloud in the regions in Sydney and Melbourne are in OC1. We're going to be our own New Zealand realm OC31, which means it's completely separated from the rest of the Oracle regions, and Auckland West and Auckland North. Next slide. There's a list of our services. So we've got compute, network, and storage, and we've got all those PaaS services, and that list is all available now, and it will all be available to our customers from the 1st of August. And we do have a full price list, which we can go through, and we can provide quotes already, and obviously we can take orders today, after you've had a glass of wine, hopefully. Next one. Yeah. The other big thing, and a lot of people are worried, and this is always seen as a risk, is how do I actually get into the cloud, and how do I do cloud enablement? And Oracle have a cloud center of excellence team, and with that team, they've been able to produce a lot of very configurable dashboards, which means that probably 80 to 90% of the migration is automated from a workload perspective. There's still the cloud enablement, they're still looking at business processes, they're still looking at your integration, but the migration, and we've got access to that team to help you. And for a lot of workloads, we can provide the Center of Excellence tools free of charge. So we've got the backing, and Oracle's done a huge amount of work. We saw a dashboard and some other tools that they've produced last Friday, and it's just incredible. It would take, I'm not a technical person, but Byron, one of Oracle's architects, sort of explained to us, lay people, that what we were seeing being done in 15 minutes would normally take someone weeks or months. So it's incredible. We can really fast track and speed up that migration. And that's all from me. So now we've got 3 fascinating speakers. So I'd like to hand over to Chris.
Good morning. How are you? Good afternoon. Sorry, I'm still in Perth time. Can you tell? So what is it? It is 8:35 in the morning. So I don't have a clicker here, so I'm just going to say next slide if that's okay. Firstly, I don't know. I'm with Ian. I don't know what you've been talking about the weather all along. I think it's pretty good out there today. So and what a great welcome. What a great reason to be here in Wellington with you today. You heard about Team Cloud, and Team Cloud is underpinned by the Oracle Cloud, OCI. So I thought it's apt for us to really maybe talk about very quickly as to what is OCI and why OCI, because it's important to maybe get a baseline frame as to what it is, what are the services that come with it, and some of which Ian covered at a high level. And then we'll talk about what does it mean when we bring OCI into New Zealand as Team Cloud. So next slide, please. So I think it's important. Oh, there we go. That's what we're going to talk about. Next again, please. Okay, so why OCI? And next again. There we go. So I think it's a couple of tenets. When you look at Oracle Cloud, it's important to understand that OCI started 11 years after the first infrastructure cloud. So one side of me can say, well, you guys are late. But the flip side would be, if you look at IT and IT evolution, 11 years is a long time for innovation to gestate, right? Innovation to be redefined. So when we started 11 years after everybody else had their cloud in place, we sort of said, we're not going to build the same thing. That would be ridiculous, right? We're actually going to start with a clean sheet of paper, and we're going to look at what are the bottlenecks that aren't resolved in current clouds. What's holding customers back from moving workloads from on-premises to the clouds? If we can help customers remove those barriers of entry and help them make it easy to move workloads to the cloud, we're going to get a rapid adoption. That was the premise of it. So we started 11 years after the cloud with a clean sheet. We were going to break some rules because everybody else in the market, the other 3 or 4 hyperscalers, have got pretty much the same architecture, but we were able to be different. So 5 things we did that were quite different. First thing we did is, it's technical there, it says off-box virtualization, but basically we isolated the cloud provider's control plane from what the customers run. So there's a physical separation and isolation there. That's a good thing from a security perspective. Just in day one, security is built in. There's physical isolation between what we deploy to control the cloud versus what the customer brings on top of the cloud. That is very differentiated relative to the other cloud providers. It also means we take away the hypervisor tax, that performance overhead that a software-based hypervisor delivers for you, right? Because we're running off-box in its own processor adjacent to you, not underneath the customer tenancy. Very, very different. So with that difference, you get some performance benefits. We also then said, performance is good, but enterprise workloads needs predictability as well. So how do you get predictability? Well, everything in the cloud is deployed across the network. Everything's a network resource in the cloud. Well, in the other hyperscalers, you don't know if something's going to be 2 hops away, 5 hops away, or 17 hops away as you go between service 1, service 2, service 3. And as you go between region 1 and region 2, it's completely unpredictable. In fact, your early deployments may be 3 hops away, the next ones might be 5 hops away. So we redesigned the networking infrastructure in OCI, so everything was 2 hops away. That now delivers you predictability. So you got performance and isolation from the first differentiation. You got predictability with the second differentiation. Now with that predictability and performance and isolation, we're the only hyperscale cloud that can deliver performance-based SLAs as well, not just availability SLAs. Availability SLAs, everybody does. Are you alive? Yes, I'm alive. Performance SLAs, are you alive and can you run 0 to 100 in 5 seconds? Yes, I can. There's a performance implication behind it. We can do that because we're isolated, there's no hypervisor and bare metal, we've got predictable networking infrastructure. We also then maximize how much we pack into the density. So we're running in green data centers, but within those green data centers, we're very, very highly dense dense in our compute structures, so we take less floor space. So that in itself also delivers benefits for customers. Extremely flexible infrastructure. The cloud was all about elasticity. It was all about agility, right? Why do you go to cloud? Because you can provision things really quickly. You can start small. You can scale up fast. You can scale down fast. That was what cloud was supposed to be. But the other hyperscalers tend to put you into fixed t-shirt sizes of shapes. And we took all of those boundaries away because we started clean. So we don't have fixed t-shirt size for shapes. You design the shapes you want. Slider bar, how much of CPU, how much of memory, how much of storage IOs you need, and how much networking throughput you need. And all of that is completely configurable and flexible for our customers, not available anywhere else, right? So we're putting, or the way I like to say it, we're making the cloud elastic again, right? You can start really small, you can scale really, really quickly. And last but not least, simple, predictable pricing. Quite often when we speak and present quotes to customers, they ask us, have you made a mistake, right? It doesn't seem right. And I think it's important, Ian, you asked for orders this afternoon. I'm just going to ask for quotes, right? Maybe we can ask for quotes this afternoon. But I think it does come across that, there's a significant difference. Why? How do we do this? It's because it's architected differently, right? So we can actually do this in a very, very different, very different technology footprint. So that is OCI. Next slide, please. What does that give us? Those differentiators give us a number of things. It gives us predictable performance, like I talked about. It gives us a very flat cost curve. So by designing things like the network differently, we don't have to charge for egress. It's a very, very big cost for customers on clouds today. Our egress costs are flat, if not nothing, for customers, right? So there's a reason to move to the cloud because I've made it really easy to move to the cloud, but I'm also not pushing you into an island where you can't get out of the cloud. So we're encouraging customers to move in and out as you see necessary. So very flat cost curve, full flexibility like I always talked about, and always on security, because by default, like I said, we're physically isolated, right? And our tenancies are physically isolated because everything's down to bare metal. So tenancy A is not sharing the same computer protected by a software hypervisor. It has its own cores and threads that are not shared by tenancy B. So it's physical isolation. Very, very different in how we're able to then give you an always-on security because it's not bolted on, it's built in. Next slide, please. This one gets customers. They go like, great, so you've built this cloud, it's differentiated, so it really works really well for Oracle workloads, right? Of course it does. Of course it's going to work well for Oracle workloads. But more importantly, what we're seeing is the uptake has been around massive enterprise workloads. So large, I call them monolith workloads, but legacy workloads, monolith workloads, large core systems, PeopleSoft, eBusiness, Siebel, SAP, that couldn't move to clouds before because the clouds weren't offering the same characteristics of performance, reliability, scalability, predictability. We're able to pick them up and move them to the cloud, right? Cloud native workloads, if you build completely open source, zero Oracle database, just using all of the open source frameworks like Uber, like Zoom, like Experian, like SoundHound, all of these folks have got zero Oracle database, zero Oracle applications, but they're using us purely for infrastructure. Compute, network, storage, predictable, price performant, secure, right? That's what they're doing for. Large enterprise estates, if you've got large VMware environments and VMware footprints, again, migrating them to the cloud, a very, very quick proposition on OCI because we make it easy for you to do so. And last but not least, everything we've done with this networking and this scale is really apt for machine learning and AI, especially AI because, I was joking yesterday, Bob Marley says, no data, no AI, right? So no data, no AI. So, if you think about what's AI, there's two extremes of how AI is being worked on. There's going to be large language models that are being built, and there's going to be everybody doing simple use cases like summarization and things like that. But for the enterprise, AI really works when you can take these models and bring them in-house and apply them against your data. No one's going to pick their data up and go outside. And so our ability to bring AI to the data is, again, we've flipped that pyramid on how you do AI. And you see the uptake of the largest AI companies in the world are bringing workloads to Oracle Cloud. NVIDIA themselves is a customer of Oracle Cloud. They offer their DGX Cloud as a SaaS service on OCI. You can't say that about any of the other hyperscalers. Every hyperscaler is a customer of NVIDIA. Every hyperscaler is a customer of NVIDIA, but NVIDIA is one of our customers as well, right? If you're running a Bing query, that's running on OCI, right? And there's many others that are running and jumping onto this platform for the reasons we talked about. Last slide, please, before I hand over to my colleague. Great, so you built this cloud, Chris. It's OCI, it's differentiated. Where is it? Well, we started in 2019 with our first region. You can see where we are now, 68 customer-facing regions. We're opening regions every 22 days because one of the things about building a differentiated cloud, we also shrunk the footprint. So we're able to deliver really quickly. And Ian said that. 9 months it took us from paper signing to going live last Sunday. That's an unheard of achievement with any of the other hyperscalers. So we're going and getting closer and closer and closer to customers. We also fully recognize in this whole structure that customers are not going to go to cloud if it's only public cloud. There's a need to bring that cloud closer and closer to the edge, and the edge being geographical boundaries, but over time, even enterprise boundaries, so within your own organization. And that's what we're structured and designed to do. With that, I'm going to go next slide, and we're going to talk a little bit about our distributed cloud strategy, and I'm going to have Christian here come and talk about what we've done with OCI as a whole, everything that I just talked about, and how we've brought that and made that relevant to the New Zealand market. Christian, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Afternoon, everyone. If this is your winter, I'll take it as my summer, okay? So I live in Seattle, so that will give you a hint. As Chris was saying, one of the things that we think differently about OCI, and I work in OCI and I manage basically our dedicated cloud portfolio, okay, is we have a new architecture that we can use in different places. So instead of thinking about, okay, we're only going to build regions in certain countries, like you think about in everywhere else, we are going to bring this cloud to you in a different form factor. And effectively, that's what we do. Now, when we think about distributed cloud, it's effectively, can we bring the same capabilities and technology to different landscape? And the different landscape is not just the geographical boundary, as Chris was saying, is sometimes is verticals, like financial services, or things like oil and gas, or power and water, and things like that. So there are many scenarios that are now unveiling, and I think what our strategy allows us to, and if you can go to the next slide, is to enable the workloads that are not necessarily posed for a public cloud. Because if you are basically trying to compete with the same scenarios, it's the same workload going through, okay, I have 4 options now. This is about the rest. You can do that, totally, do it, no problem. But what about the rest? And the challenge I always pose to the customers is, okay, tell me what about the workloads you cannot move. Don't tell me about the workloads that you can move. Tell me about the other ones, okay? Because I think that's the challenge I pose to you. Think about that. And when we think about our offering, effectively, we have this mentality. And the mentality is, hey, we're going to actually offer different solutions for the different type of problems based on the same technology, okay? And our proposal is, hey, we're going to have public clouds, 100%. We believe there's a walled garden, effectively, of clouds today, but we believe the customers are going to have different options and want to have different options. So we do multi-cloud as well. We do hybrid cloud. We have different edge solutions. We have different ways to connect things. And because you have different problems. In some places, you may have space for a data center. In some places, you may have a closet. And we need to solve for both. And finally, the concept of creating this architecture that we have in OCI that allows us to actually simplify the size of this is something we continue to innovate. But effectively, we can deploy a region, a full-blown hyperscale region, in a very small footprint, which is something that nobody else can say. I feel very proud about that. I spent a lot of time with the guys in blue, so like 17 years. So the reality is our architecture allows us to actually offer a lot more flexibility. Now, how that actually represents in practical terms, if you can go to the next slide, is the following. we have effectively these 4 tenets that we follow for this approach. Again, compute is compute everywhere, okay? It's the same thing. It's the same computers, it's not different. What is different? Security. I offer you more layers of security because effectively security is based on, of course, the technology that we have, but also how do you use that technology applied to your specific scenario, okay? Now, innovation technologies. Okay, of course, we're going to have IaaS, of course, that's basics, but we continue to actually innovate. So I joined OCI about 3.5 years ago, and we were in this race of, hey, can we get to parity? And we got to parity very quickly, okay, to all the services. And then, okay, what else? Okay, what else are we building? And we keep doing that. And we are not stuck into, okay, we're at parity, we're good enough. No, we keep actually creating new services. All the MLOps, AI services, GenAI services that we're creating are basically over the last 24 months. And we're going to continue to do that. Now, the other thing that we discuss a lot because of, and this is very, I think, palpable based on what happened on Friday, is the balance between availability and durability, okay? So we're going to give you options that you can have in a given country, in a given market, but also we optimize for being available. So we do want to actually optimize availability at different levels, and we want to make sure that those workloads that are going to be there are durable over time. So that sounds, okay, everyone does that. What's the difference? The difference is with the level of flexibility that we have, we can actually put different cloud deployments in different places that may not necessarily be suitable for a large hyperscaler. So as an example, I can go to really small countries. I can go to specific regions of a country and deploy. And that allows us to actually offer certain customers scenarios that they were not open to them before. And I think the last one, which is very interesting in the case of New Zealand, is, of course, you have regulatory compliance. I probably can name more compliance regimes I would like to. and the reality is there's one common thread. Governments and companies across the world, they care about the data of their citizens and their users. That's what they care. That's why I want you to care, because I'm a consumer and user of probably some of companies that work here. And the reality is having that data properly secure and encrypted across the life cycle is critical. And as Chris was saying before, we actually separate those two. And we provide a level of assurances. And the good example I always give is the cloud, most clouds are based in Seattle. Happens to be the place where all these clouds are. Now, what happens when someone updates the cloud at 3 in the morning Seattle time? Maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon here. And well, one of the things that we do and that we have the capability of doing is, you know what? We know New Zealand time, and we actually are going to do maintenance and updates when actually is appropriate to this business and this market. And we have that flexibility. And we also work with partners like Team Cloud to actually define what is the best use business case for that. In some countries, Sunday is a working day. So we don't do things on Sundays. And we have that level of flexibility that I invite you to ask your other providers if they can do that. So it's very, very difficult. Now, we do have all these needs that customers have been telling us, and we transform this into an offering. If you can go to the next slide. And the offering effectively, next slide. The offering is effectively the same architecture in different modalities, okay? And this is basically all the clouds from OCI that you're going to see. Of course, we have commercial clouds. And commercial cloud is like the regions in Australia, or the regions in Singapore or Japan. Now, we do have, in the EU in particular, we have a cloud that only serves the EU, with regions in the EU, with people that resides in the EU, with a boundary around this, okay? The EU is very particular because, of course, there's 27 member states that have a common set of rules. That's very difficult to achieve in other places because of the just geopolitics of it. It's nothing to do with us. But we have an offering that is designed to meet the regulatory compliance and sovereignty needs they have. And it's a full-blown sovereign cloud. It was the first live and announced. We keep expanding it. We basically kind of keep up with the demand, basically. The customers keep coming up. The governments keep coming up. We do have government clouds beyond the US. We have government clouds in the US, in the UK, in Australia, and a couple of other places I can't tell you. But we actually are able to provide a community cloud for governments for them to actually run the critical workloads with protected citizen data and all that. And then we have what I call basically dedicated cloud. And there's three models. One model is you're a really, really large customer and you really want to run this thing yourself, okay? And I have quite a few of those. Think about large multinationals, large telcos, that they want to have their own cloud. Okay, go at it. You can have it. And we run it, we manage for them, and they have complete customer control, okay? Now, we have isolated regions when think about national security. So if you want actually to run secret data, that cannot be connected to the internet. Now, all the things that we have been talking here is public clouds. What happens when you have basically secret data of a country? You want to be that disconnected. We can do the same thing, so we can actually do that. And I think the third one is, and this is the interesting part for me, when we created Alloy, and effectively from whiteboard to production, it took us like about 18 months. It was about business enablement. Hey, can we enable those workloads? Can we enable those customers? And I think it became, because of the changes in the world, effectively, it became really prevalent as, hey, this is going to be a solution for sovereignty needs. And that became really critical in many countries. So what we have been working on it is with partners like Team Cloud to decide, okay, in this market, who has a better chance to be successful? Oracle or a partner that's actually partnering with Oracle? And there's simple things, like for instance, in certain markets, the customers cannot contract with an American corporation. Okay, contract with the local partner. It's not up to me, for whatever reason. Or the partner wants to have local support in the local language. I want to make sure that when basically anyone is calling saying, I have a problem, it's answering in the local language. Well, you guys happen to speak English, so that's easy. But, but think about places like Japan or Korea or Bangladesh. Like English is not the first language, and it's not going to be like what we're going to solve for. So there, we can customize to a level that actually fits that country needs or that market needs. And I think that's what we partner, and this is different than a CSP model. A CSP model is, hey, here you can sell some of my cloud and bring the customers to me. That's a typical CSP, okay? And that's the partners do. This is not what we do. Here is basically what we're doing is Ian and Craig and family, basically, they are going to the market and we're backing them up. So we are the nerds behind basically the operations that happens. And that effectively is what enables a different model. So, and this is our offering. And we believe, I personally believe, that Team Cloud is supposed to be really, really successful in New Zealand. Because it's a new offering, it's a new offering in the market. And again, my message to you, remember, don't think about the things that you can move to the guys in orange or the guys in blue, okay? Everyone is already thinking about that, okay? Everyone is competing for those workloads already, okay? Think about everything else. Think about those too, of course, but think about everything else that you cannot move. And I want a list, hey, these are the things I cannot move, and tell me why. That's my challenge. I always pose this challenge. So I want to hear that. You can tell Ian or Craig later, and they will tell me, hey, I cannot, because that's the way I build my roadmap. What you cannot move is I'm going to work on it. I'm going to solve it. So that is my message to you, is think about how we are enabling to do that. Now, I think I have one more slide. This is something that is a bit shocking to people, but I will say that it's very simple. We use the same architecture, the same services, and we have the same bar. The same way that we deploy the service for a private, secure, secret region is the same service that you have in Team Cloud. Exactly the same. There's not a different version, there's not a different code, there's not a different thing. It's exactly the same. What we do differently is how we deploy it and how it runs. Scale, country, connectivity, things like that. Now, we are engineering the services in a way that's scalable. And effectively, you can start small, as Chris was saying, or you can be really, really big. Like the largest deployments that we have, and it's the same technology, are literally, there's one data center that's about the size of 5 777s right next to each other. That's the size of one DC. and we have many of those. And it is the same architecture, the same technology that we use here. So, and I think the other thing that we do is and I have this is happening right now. It happened to a customer that they lost connectivity, okay? And that happens, stuff happens. And it's completely out of our control. It's in a place where basically something's happening and no connectivity. The region kept running, and right now it's been actually, connectivity came back after 5 days, and we're trying to figure out, okay, is everything working? Yeah, everything's working. So now, can I solve for network connectivity everywhere? We have a ton of redundancy, but effectively sometimes things do happen, and countries do get disconnected sometimes. And we have the ability to keep working. Of course, SLAs and all of that is a different story, but it didn't break. And I think the concept is we're going to continue to iterate to actually make it resilient, really resilient. And again, that's how we build all the clouds, including Team Cloud. So there's no difference. And if there's a difference, it's because maybe we made a mistake. That happens, but it's not the case. So I think my message really is, I want to see not what you are doing today. I want to see what you can do. What you can do in New Zealand, what you can do with Team Cloud. I want to know actually what you need. I want to know what is actually missing, because that's how we're going to continue to build this forward. And I tell Ian and Craig this, hey, I want to build the next generation of this, because we deployed the region, great. Now we're thinking about the next step. So that's the way that we think. So my invitation to you is, go use it. In my experience, knowing the rest of the offers, I would challenge on, again, what is actually not here. I think that's and take some pride on, hey, you have a New Zealand cloud. I'm from a small country as well. So I think that's important. I think that's important too. So I don't know if, I think we have time for questions now. So.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Christian and Chris and Ian. So Chris and Ian, can you please scoot on up here, and we're going to do a quick 10-minute Q&A sesh with you three. Yeah. So come on, stand centre stage here. Yeah, men of the moment. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So just open the floor. Has anybody got? Oh, good. We got two. We got two. All right. Do you probably don't need a mic, eh? Yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind for me is that New Zealand, the whole structure of this economy is built on the small to medium enterprise. 75% of New Zealanders are employed in small to medium enterprises, and they are on average 5 employees. Is this an option for another party to stand up something that could support those sorts of organisations to operate their infrastructure in the cloud? And what's the smallest tenancy you can support? Could I stand up a virtual PC within this, for example?
Short answer is yes. There's no minimum or maximum. And I mean, we're standing up a tenancy right now for our sandbox environments for internal use, and they're not large. We actually talked about this yesterday, and I talked to someone who has a sort of an ecosystem of partners who are all startups, and they all have exactly the same issue. And I mean, I started a company in the mid-90s, and the first thing we had to do was buy a Dell server, and we could only do it because I had a large credit card limit. Small companies just don't have the funds. So, yes. Yeah.
The short answer is yes, and I think there's an opportunity to think about those small and medium companies. Is the opportunity for partners and service providers and local to do that. When you think about those to go to a large hyperscaler, it sounds like scary because it's intimidating. Oh, I'm going to contract with these guys. I don't know who they are. Like, I don't even know how to read that contract. And that's why we work with partners that know the market. Because, of course, I'm in the one-size-fits-all t-shirt business, but he's in the New Zealand t-shirt size business. And that's important.
Yeah. Just one more thing as well. So yes, it is completely elastic. Start as small as you need, grow as much as you need. The other thing is the rich set of services. So if you just bought a computer or you just bought compute, what do you, as a small business with 5 employees, what do you do on top of it? So having a rich set of services to do autonomous capabilities, to build up, a low-code application development, out-of-box analytics, all of those things are just increasing and enhancing productivity of this organization immediately. Because it's not a subset of services, not just compute, network, storage, it's every cloud service that we have in the Oracle Cloud globally, available here through Team Cloud.
Yeah, it goes back to your the stuff that is left behind, and bang in the middle of that group for me is legacy stuff.
Sorry, I didn't want to hear you in the back.
Sorry. Your question.
I know Harry from a former life. Harry works. If you just
Repeat the question. So
yeah, just also say who you work for as well.
Can you turn the mic
Oh
on?
yeah, okay. I'm Harry Perkins. I suppose I'm technical still. I work for DXE Technology in the Oracle space, and I've been with Oracle for a long time. But my question was about the stuff you can't move to the cloud, rather than the stuff that you can, and in the middle of that is legacy stuff, stuff that's recently out of support and so forth. So is there any consideration or possibilities there?
So it depends a lot on what you say out of support. If you're talking about hardware, yeah, there's always a way to move that. And we work with different customers that have like all Unix systems and you name it. There's a big mainframe migration happening right now in a customer, for instance. I think the fundamental question is, like, if you're running a database that's not up to date, that's a problem. Because, for instance, as we increase basically versions and we have supported versions, as an example, and this is a real example, there was a customer that didn't want to move to the latest version of the database for, I don't know, whatever reason, doesn't matter. And one of the latest updates, it was that we have found a pattern for data exfiltration, which is the last thing that you want in a database. So it's like eat your veggies. so you do, there's things that you have to do, okay? Can you move all stuff into this deployment? Yes. I think there's things that you cannot get away with it, which is, hey, can I run unsupported things? Sure, but the level of risk of that is too high. And also, we're not going to offer you a service that, oh, it's unsupported, so let me offer that to you in a cloud service. It doesn't really work. So it's too much of a risk that you may be taking. And I think believe me, I have plenty of discussions. And I think the consideration is, okay, what is the level of risk that you're willing to absorb, which is not trivial. So,
if I may just add to that, so there's a couple of things. If cloud's been around close to 20 years, if you ask any of the analysts what percentage of workloads are on the cloud today, 25, 30%. After 20 years, 70% still hasn't moved. Now you compare that to other technologies, smartphone, internet, etc. Way above in terms of adoption rate. So you go like, hang on a minute, everybody knows why cloud's beneficial. Rapid provisioning, evergreen infrastructure, start small, scale high. If everybody knows that, why is it that only 25 to 30% of workloads are on the cloud today? And it's because, one answer, the cloud and providers give you an environment that's very different to what you have on premises. The systems that can't move, to Christian's point, are the ones that, hey, they need dedicated hardware. Why? Because it's a core system. I don't need anybody else on there. Well, physical isolation solves that problem, right? I can't move it because it's tied to my networking ecosystem that I need to hear. The data gravity problem, well, we solve that with our low latency. So we've taken away some of the inhibitors that just kept 70% on premises in the first place. But then, off that 70% that's on premises, even if they had the perfect environment, there's things that Christian talked about. There'll be version compatibility and things like that. And again, I then go back to our pedigree as an enterprise vendor. A lot of this software is based on Oracle technology in that sense, right? And so our ability to do live data replications and to do, clones and replicate, all of those sort of smarts in terms of bringing you up to the current level, because you want to be current, right? also helps. So now you've got an environment that's equivalent, you've got a migration path that's similar. Then the last thing we do is, with the set of autonomous services we offer, is we're always on. So we call it the last upgrade you'll make. Because once you're in the cloud and you're running autonomous services, the patching and the upgrades and the cloning and the backups, etc., you're current. So it's a three-step sort of reason as to why we can take those workloads, I call them handcuffed, that have been handcuffed to on-premises. 70% have been handcuffed to on-premises. We can remove those shackles.
Awesome. Have we got any more questions? The back.
There's a couple of things I don't think we've covered. So for Oracle users, you can bring your own license to Team Cloud. And then over time, if you want to move to autonomous Oracle database, you can, or you can just carry on running in the IaaS. The other one, which has obviously been quite topical recently, is VMware. And we have the same pricing, etc. in Team Cloud as Oracle will have around VMware. And if you've got VMware licenses about to expire and you've been given a new quote by Broadcom, which has made you stagger around thinking, I've got to find another 200 or 300% to pay this, then we have we've inherited the VMware deal from Oracle, which means we can give you a price which is almost comparable to what you're paying now.
If I could just add on that VMware, that's an example of a workload that's been handcuffed as well, right? Because if you look at how VMware offerings happens in the other hyperscale cloud providers, it's a one-way migration. You lose control. You change your standard operating procedures. You have to pass your passwords and root credentials onto the cloud provider. It's not a smooth migration. It's a barrier. If you have to do all of those things in your organization, you go, I'm not going to do that. That's too much work. Not only have we inherited the commercials from the VMware acquisition, but we've also made it really easy to live migrate. So one of the things with the networking stack is we're virtualized at layer 2 of the networking stack. So we look like an extension of your data center. So you effectively create a dedicated connection into Team Cloud, and you use the same set of VMware software that you have on premises today. Don't change versions, don't change passwords, don't change operating, and you live migrate. So we stand up a OCVS cluster for you. It takes about 2.5 hours. It's a triple redundant cluster. And you live migrate your VMs, and you're done. You're done. Handcuffs removed, right?
And the next step after that is to move to native VMs or native containers. So after you are in a cloud deployment, doing that is a lot easier. So customers I see doing that, they're doing like 2 steps. So move quickly, move easily, and then long-term think about your strategy and your platform.
Yeah, and that can cover non-Oracle workloads, obviously, as well.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's the richness of services I talked about earlier. It's not just computer network. When you have things like that on top of it, makes it easy to remove the handcuffs. We got one more question.
Ian, I think you mentioned, as part of what you were saying, you used the word SaaS, and I think you meant the SAS rather than the SaaS. Is that correct?
SaaS, software as a service.
You didn't mean SaaS, the software company?
No.
So across the New Zealand landscape, SaaS are well entrenched. They might be retreating, but there's some large organisations that still run SaaS, and they run it in the cloud in some instances. Could you stand up a SaaS instance inside your Oracle cloud? Because I think there's an opportunity if you could.
If all they need is compute, memory and storage, yes.
I don't see why not.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely would talk to them, but that's exactly what we're aiming at, those sorts of non-Oracle. Yeah, we're looking at those. We are looking at those non-Oracle workloads as well, and I think globally, I think in Oracle Cloud, 60% of the workloads in Oracle regions are non-Oracle. Yeah.
It's even higher.
Or higher. Yeah.
Awesome. So we have probably time for one more question before we break. Oh, yes. Here you are.
Another familiar face.
Yeah, so Sabi currently with Cognizant. Do we have any reference customers near region, like in Australia, for example, that we can showcase as like Oracle Alloy doing well and all that in closer to this region?
Yep.
Sorry, did you say you're from Cognizant?
Yes.
You're also one of our big customers globally, so thank you. Okay, so one of the things that we have to be clear that we articulate over and over again, because it seems too good to be true, is that OCI globally, public cloud region, is identical to what we do in dedicated regions, and it's identical to what we've done in Team Alloy. So asking for an Alloy reference would be great. We can find, there are other alloys, but Alloy's only been around for 2 years. But OCI has been around for 5-6 years. And so the market momentum you have there, because it's service parity, it's SLA parity, it's certification parity. If we release a new service tomorrow in Oracle's public cloud, you'll have it in Team Cloud, right? And there are thousands of OCI customers. I'd say for those different workloads that I had there, monolith, cloud native, we can get down to very explicit by country, by industry, by type of workload, by size of organization, thousands of customers.
I will follow up with one more, saying that let's say you have this Alloy right now, and what does, for example, someone says, oh, we can have Outpost. How am I going to counter this, maybe it's not like for like, but it's promoted as like for like. So what would be our counter argument to that? Or
So
didn't you work for a blue company before?
I used to work. Yeah, I know the blue and the orange things. So I think the common perspective that people use is because can be small. They try to actually map out that, and the reality is all the edge solutions like Outpost or even local zones or stack or whatever is the edge thing of the day, they're incomplete solutions, number one, okay? So they do not offer all the cloud services. Good, that's number one. Number two, all those solutions require for you to be connected to let's say I'm going to call it like the main control plane of that cloud provider, okay? So you're connected to a commercial region that's controlled by that globally, okay? In the case here, you're using a region that's actually controlled by them that has nothing to do with commercial, nothing to do, that give you, let's say, an identity boundary that is controlled here, that we don't have access, that gives you a level of sovereignty and isolation that basically doesn't exist anywhere else. So I think those are common patterns that we see. Now, to your question on where else do we have this, we are very thoughtful about where we put basically this type of deployments because we don't want to atomize the market with offerings, of course. But we do have live regions in Italy, Japan, New Zealand now. We have publicly, and I have more, but I cannot comment. But the ones that we have publicly announced too is in Saudi. So we have one in Saudi, we have a partner in Saudi, and we have a partner in UAE as well. So those are public references there in the Oracle site. Those 5, I can talk about it. I have more, but
that's good enough. Thank you.
Is it?
They published it.
Oh, right.
We haven't.
Yeah, we haven't. So there's more. I'm really busy. Let me put it in those terms. I'm really busy.
He travels a bit. He travels a bit.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your questions. So we're just going to take a 10-minute break. So maybe grab some more food, get a drink, go to the bathroom, and then after the break, we're going to be hearing from Sean Muller about all the exciting opportunities with sovereign AI to come. So circle back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a riveting segment ahead, not to be missed. This could make or break the future of your organisation. So it's my pleasure to introduce Sean Muller, who is the Head of Technology at Being AI, and he has some incredible things to talk about around the opportunities with sovereign AI. Given we now have a sovereign cloud in New Zealand, this opens up a lot of awesome options. So over to you.
Thank you, Katie. I always love to hear someone introduce me because every time it's introduced slightly differently. So I was asked to come in and talk about sovereign AI. So I'm the token AI guy in the room. Every conference now has to have a token AI guy that comes and talks about artificial intelligence. But actually, sovereign AI, look, we've been talking about sovereign cloud today, and the Team Cloud and the Oracle guys have done a very good job about explaining what the infrastructure as service is and the software as a service and running sovereign cloud. So sovereign AI is functionally greater than what that looks like. So when we talk about sovereign AI, we're not just talking about where it runs. By the way, we are talking about where it runs. The artificial intelligence, to be sovereign, needs to run in some place that's considered sovereign. But we also need to take into account the data that was used to train that artificial intelligence. So 5 million people in New Zealand. If you're using a foundational model from Meta or OpenAI, you're not even a rounding error of the data that was used to train that foundational model. So even if you picked up one of Meta's models and ran it in an Oracle cloud here in New Zealand, it's not sovereign AI. Now, what does that mean for your customers? It means that the AI doesn't necessarily bend towards New Zealand. It doesn't necessarily understand New Zealand accents. Now, I know that my accent doesn't sound very, very New Zealand. I've been here 11 years. I'm a citizen. I'm allowed to say that. But the reality is that most of the natural language processing that isn't developed in New Zealand doesn't take into account New Zealand accents, let alone Maori words. And by the way, my son, my 4-year-old, corrects my Maori pronunciation on literally a daily basis. So sovereign AI is more than just where it runs. It's the data that was used to train it, and it's how the data that the AI collects is used. So the second thing is that once you have a model trained on New Zealand data, assuming we have enough data to actually train the model, that model's going to actually do something with the data that it collects. If all that data comes in and immediately goes overseas and is used by, I don't know, a large social media company to create an echo chamber for people in New Zealand to only hear news about New Zealand, then that fundamentally is not sovereign AI. Now, for government agencies, sovereign AI makes a lot of sense. Did everybody at least read the news article, Judith's interview, where she talked about New Zealand needs to build a large language model? By the way, I fundamentally agree with her. There are some reasons within New Zealand, especially on the government side, that we need to be able to do this. But unless you're a government agency, unless you're dealing with iwi data where they're concerned about the sovereignty of their data because it's part of their mana, you might not care, but you should. There is such a thing as company sovereign data. So you as a company, I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you are currently doing AI in your companies today? Just a show of hands. Just, are you doing any AI at all? I hate to tell you this, but those of you not raising your hands, you're probably doing AI and don't know it. Shadow AI is the fastest growing artificial intelligence use case in business today. If you ever use Google to search something online, if your PA ever uses ChatGPT to format your next speech that you have to make at a board meeting, you're using somebody else's AI and somebody else's data and somebody else's business context to be able to deliver you the outcome that you're trying to get for your business. So there is a microcosm, a micro-sovereign for your use of AI. And so some of that might be, I need to run it locally. I have a customer that requires me to maintain that data in New Zealand for a reason. And there are legitimate reasons, whether it be a government agency, whether it be iwi, whether it be goodwill of the... We in New Zealand are very transparent business-wise and government-wise compared to the rest of the world. And so you may be asked by your customers, are you keeping my data in New Zealand before you use it? So there is a need for sovereign AI within your business as well. But you need to understand that there are foundational models, and if you deploy those foundational models and use them in New Zealand and don't take into account the data that was used to train them, Anybody here ever heard of a transcription service called Dragon? Dragon's been around a while. Yeah, Dragon's been around transcribing for a while. By the way, in the early 2000s, Dragon purchased a natural language processing company, and they updated their software, and at that time, they were about 95% accurate in transcription of American English. When we run it against current Dragon services that are cloud-based, SaaS-based, we're looking at about 82% accuracy on New Zealand accents. That's what you get when you're not running Sovereign. Sovereign AI takes into account the data, the training data for the artificial intelligence, but also what's used for that data going forward. And by the way, we're a test bed. I love the fact that you mentioned Saudi Arabia and UAE. The reality is these other countries are actually looking to New Zealand to see how we do sovereign AI, because they're going to have to do sovereign AI as well. EU is going to have its own sovereign AI because their legislative laws are going to drive them to have a separate AI just for EU. But who was it? I just saw a news article. It was either Google or OpenAI that said they weren't going to be deploying certain AI services in EU because they couldn't meet the legislative requirements for transparency in data. So understand, this is not a New Zealand problem. This is a New Zealand opportunity. So building sovereign AI in New Zealand can show the rest of the world how they can build sovereign AI, which is, yeah, it's running it in a sovereign cloud so that the data stays here in New Zealand, but it's also running it in a way that is sustainable for New Zealand, that uses New Zealand context and New Zealand data to get New Zealand outcomes. I think we've got a few minutes for questions. Yep.
We do have time for questions. Yes.
Any questions about sovereign AI or artificial intelligence in general?
Yeah, perfect.
Another one of these edge cases, I guess. The GDPR covers European citizens.
Yes, it does.
I'm a European citizen. I live in New Zealand.
Yep.
How is that dealt with in this context?
It's a very good question. Look, GDPR is a very good question, and as of yet, I'm not aware of a case that that GDPR has been used as for New Zealand citizens. The most visceral one is, you have to forget me because I've asked you to forget everything about me. And I don't know that that's been tested outside of European boundaries. Do you know if it's been tested? I don't think it has. I don't think it's been tested. But the reality is, and by the way, the EU AI Act that just recently passed had in it this transparency around forgetting data. By the way, nobody's proven how to make that work. How do you take an existing foundational model and somehow track it back, remove all the data for that one individual, and then track it forward? And is that even fiscally possible? That hasn't been tested yet. So it's a good question. I don't think we know the answer to it yet.
Does it kind of test whether what you're stating is true or not?
That's right. That's right. So if the answer is we can't, then that might be then you're not sovereign.
Awesome. Any more questions? Oh, Kieran. The photographer's got a question. Love it.
Thank you. I'm curious about the actual data that would form part of a sovereign data set of sorts. Obviously, there's an enormous amount of data that would be required to make a sovereign AI.
It depends.
Okay, it depends. I'm curious about where that data comes from, what that data is, and perhaps the different varieties of data that would make different varieties of AI, whether it's generative or otherwise.
Yeah. So, look, if anybody ever wants to have a deep dive discussion with me about artificial intelligence, I'm more than willing to have that conversation. I have an opinion about generative AI. I think it's the cream on the top of the coffee, and the artificial intelligence is the rest of the coffee. So let's set generative AI aside for a second. Most of the sovereign AI models are going to be smaller level models. The reality is that within 3 years, every single one of you is going to have your own AI agent running on your phone. And it's going to be trained on data that you fed it about you. That's a much smaller model. Now, it'll be based on a foundational model that came out of somewhere. But that's the direction we're going. For businesses, if you have a unique business use case, your business, that uniqueness about your business generates data, and that data is going to be used to transform with machine learning and AI how you do what you do. And it might tell you what your next product or service you need to build is. Does that answer your question?
Great.
I guess there's, I would consider my contributions or my business contributions to a data set kind of an inevitability. But as we speak about, there's a baseline data set and we sort of speak to that. I guess what I'm curious about is what fundamental data should be expected to form that sovereign baseline data set?
Oh, it depends on the use case, right? I mean, the reality is that it could be everything from tabular financial data all the way to just raw recordings of everything that you've said. So I obviously have a horrible American accent. My model's going to have to be trained to be able to understand and by the way, my Alexa at home does. It understands me, and it doesn't understand Kiwis that come over and visit. But they keep wanting on video calls. They keep trying to talk to my Alexa.
Got another question?
Another question, I guess, is about the boundary of what data constitutes sovereign data. I have relatives all over the world. Is the phone number of my sister who lives in London, who is a British citizen, because it's on my phone, is that sovereign NZ data or is that sovereign UK data?
It's a very good question, and I've had this discussion with several iwi and defining this. So at the very lowest level, even the metadata about your data is considered sovereign to some people depending on how they define it. It's something that we're going to have to work our way through over the next 2 to 3 years. Yeah. It's not an easy answer.
Any more questions?
Look, I want to thank Team Cloud for letting me come in and talk about sovereign AI. This is a space that is going to become hugely important, and especially if you're a government ministry, it's going to be hugely important. But also if you're a business working in New Zealand, you're going to be asked this question more and more because the context of how you use artificial intelligence for your customers is going to matter. Because if your answer is, oh yeah, well, we're using the AI that's built out of North America, that may not resonate very well with your customers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. I got the sense this is sort of the beginning of a lot of, I think people will probably want to grab you and really pick your brain about that stuff. We will be doing some interesting videos and things with Sean going forward in Being AI, so look out for some more content. We really want to support everybody with the journey of learning about the opportunities in that area. So yeah, that wraps up our session for today. Thank you very much for coming, and we hope to see you all soon. Thank you.